Okay, we're going.
Thank you very much. Welcome everyone to the first meeting of the Long-Term Care Redevelopment Planning Task Force. I will call the meeting to order. And the first item of business is the election of the chair and the vice chair for this task force. So the floor now is open for nominations for chair. Councillor O'Leary.
I nominate Councillor Burley.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Warden Hicks?
I'll second.
Okay, do I have any other nominations for chair? One more time, any other nominations for chair? Can I have a motion to close nominations, please? Councillor Robinson, Councillor Mackey, thank you. Councillor Burley, would you like to be the chair of the task force?
It'd be a pleasure.
Thank you very much. So now we will open the floor up for nominations for the vice chair. Councillor Burley.
I nominate Brian O'Leary, please.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Warden Hicks. Thank you. Are there any other motions for the vice chair? One more time, any other motions for vice chair? Can I have a motion to close nominations, please? Councillor Millen, Councillor Robinson, thank you. Councillor O'Leary, you willing to stand for vice chair?
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Thank you very much. With that, the elections are done. And Chair Burley, I'll pass the meeting over to you.
Thank you, Heather. And I thank my nominators. Mr. Warden, you had your hand up. Did you want to?
No, I don't want to interrupt your, when you get a break, I'll speak. Go ahead.
No, I want to thank my nominators. It's a pleasure to be chair of this committee. As far as I'm concerned, this committee is going to make history with long-term care. We got some great tasks ahead of us and look forward to all great discussions. And our recommendations we'll take back to County Council for final approval. And I'm very confident we'll all work together as a team and come up with a real good outcome for everything. So we're county councilors, and that's the hats we have on. And I really enjoy that we're all together here. I think we're going to do a good job. Now, Mr. Warden, did you want to say something?
Yes, I did. Well, first of all, congratulations and thank you for accepting this task. You're the right person for the job. Mr. Chairman, with your leave, I have a conflict, and I'm wondering if I might be able to pop out, attend the other meeting for a bit, and pop back in. It is a touch point meeting with the other MPPs, and there are some things that are going on right now. I wouldn't mind just touching base with them and then coming back to this meeting if it's okay with you.
Well, by all means. Thank you, Mr. Warden.
Okay, I'll be back.
Okay, I will carry on to our meeting then. If there's any declaration of interest you see, you can declare anytime you see fit during the meeting. Welcome, Kim.
Hello.
I assume what we're going to do first, we'll maybe review the terms of reference of the committee. Should we open it up and go through it line by line, or just open up?
If we can, I don't mind taking people through it. I had a few notes here. And I will admit that at some point, perhaps there were some changes made to this terms of reference that must have been lost in our document management system. So I'll speak to these things and then we can decide exactly what we want to do. So the Long-Term Care Redevelopment Planning Task Force its mission and purpose is to assist and advise County Council in fulfilling its responsibilities with respect to the planning stages of the redevelopment of Rockwood Terrace and Grey Gables long-term care facilities, and then any other affiliated uses or additional uses that might be determined appropriate through the assessment of models, the preparation of site plans and building designs, and completion of construction drawings. It was my intention, and I'll put it back to this committee to determine, but it was my intention that this committee would take us to the planning, to the completion of the planning stage. That once the planning for this was completed, and that we had got to the phase of construction drawings and we're ready to tender projects, that would be a break point here and an opportunity for folks to then either step out because they weren't as interested in the fine details of the construction phase of the redevelopment, or to continue on as you will. But it just, that to me seemed like a place, because the two things are quite different. And we do, with based on the experience that several of you had with the redevelopment of the administration building, when you're dealing with the actual construction projects, you're dealing with the things that happen in construction drawings to do with subs and timelines and coordination and materials that you do or don't get when you think you should, and all of that sort of thing. So if I was going to put one question to the group around this, it's right now it talks about the tendering and construction phases, and I'm just wondering whether or not we want to strike the construction phases out of this, with the idea that we would likely want to strike a new committee at that stage. I'll leave that with you for a moment. The responsibilities to represent the interests of the county, to ensure the needs of the county and the requirements of the Ministry of Long-Term Care are addressed. And that's something that we will spend some time on at this committee, is understanding what it is that the ministry is requiring of us through the fulfillment of the development agreement and the construction standards. You'll be reviewing plans and providing recommendations, commenting on the key deliverables for these projects as we determine them, and the milestones, and then providing regular updates to County Council related to the progress of the projects. We're in an interesting place here because we have the statutorily required long-term care committee of management. That is something that every municipality that has a long-term care home is required to have. And just to be clear, that there is that difference between the responsibilities for governance, both operating and financial, that the long-term care committee of management has as outlined in the Act, and the purpose and responsibilities of this committee, which is something that Grey County has determined is appropriate to provide oversight to these redevelopment projects. So you do have 5 shared members. So I think that there should be always good communication between council, committee of management, and the task force. But I think we can also avoid duplication and any confusion, both because we've got so many members in common, and the way we'll structure this so that committee of management, the minutes go to council and can be discussed there. And this committee, the task force here, is providing recommendations to council. So those will be discussed at county council as a whole, and then supported to move forward. The committee of management will no longer be receiving regular redevelopment updates for a little while, until we get further along into the process. And then where there's specific operation or financially related issues, that's where it would be, I think, appropriate and important for things to go back to that table, because operations and finance are the purview of the committee of management. So I hope that makes sense to everybody, and we'll, if we all work together, we can keep each other on our toes. So I'm happy to hear any questions about the striking of the construction piece or anything else.
Thank you, Kim. Before I open the floor to committee members, I agree with what you're trying to say, but with the planning stage, but we have to be very careful with the time. We have really less than 2 years on our mandate as this council, and I really can't see the time you get into the tendering phases and the actual construction that will happen in this time. It's just something we need to keep in the back of our mind. I really don't think we can fast track it that fast to get to that stage. but we need to make sure all the time we're going through this process, we have it in good shape for the new council to take over. That's very extremely important. Councilor Leary, I've seen your hand up.
Well, I think you just spoiled my question. So,
Very.
so this is, well, no, I'm just saying that, so this group here will pretty much take it until the next election then. That's what you're saying, correct? Okay. I was just going to say, because I'm sure both Paul and Christine would want to be on this committee and see it right through. But I didn't realize that the timing was going to be such that, we go right through to the next election. So that's fine. Thanks.
I will tell the committee that I did sit on the redevelopment of the county building. And when you get to that point where the committee struck to look at the actual construction portion of it, very time consuming, a lot of minutes, a lot of meetings called up at very short notice. So just keep that in the back of your mind if we ever got to that stage. I hope we would, but realistic, I can't see us getting there in this term of council. Christine, did you have your hand up?
I did, Mr. Chair, and thank you, and congratulations for being chair. I too echo Warden Hicks' sentiment when he said that you were the right person for this with all of your background, for sure. Okay, having said that, I like the terms of reference as it's outlined that we're dealing with the planning stage up to, we're also dealing with drawings. I hope, being optimistic, we get to that point. So I believe that the terms of reference are most workable for our group here. The question that I do have, and I believe CAO Wingrove explain the process. I was just looking for something with a bit more clarity, and that is, we know that the Committee of Management reports straight on to Council, as well as this committee. Will there be any cross communication between this committee and the Board of Management, or will it always move forward to Council? I recognize that it was only one member of the Board of Management, and that being Mayor Columbus, who is not on this committee. So I'm just wondering if there will ever be a linkage between the two, or will these recommendations always move forward onto Council? Thank you.
If I may, as I said, I think that the Committee of Management has the oversight responsibility for the homes meeting their operational requirements, and also for oversight to the budget process and the finances. So I guess what I envision here is where this committee is looking at an aspect of redevelopment that would have very specific operational aspects to it, or we're at a place where we're thinking we could go here, we could go, this is the financial aspects of it, that there may be times when it's appropriate to bring the two groups together, or again, it comes back to Council, where everybody has an opportunity, but to weigh in and provide advice on that.
Thank you. Supplementary, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
So I recognize, having been involved in some builds, renos, and redevelopments, attention to detail and being available for meetings is very much a priority. So that obviously is my priority as well. Sometimes it's very fast paced. You need a decision, and that's most important. So I echo your sentiments on that as well. Thanks.
Thank you. I believe, Paul, go ahead. Councilor McQueen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and yeah, congratulations on sharing this. You'll do a great job. You did a great job with the rebuild for the new, or addition to the county building. So this will just be just like going for a walk for you, Mr. Burley. Following up from that, so as the CEO said, this is the sort of, we take this to the construction drawings, but I would say that probably from our us being familiar with up to that point, I think it should be strong consideration if we get to the point of construction that the same group would continue that, just from that understanding of knowing so much more of where we are. So I'll leave it at that. The only other comment I want to make, and this may not be at this committee level, is It's sort of been, and maybe this is more of a management question of, of regards to the other committee, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. And that is because we have 2 unions and 3 contracts, and this is maybe to you, Kim, because we're going through 2 new builds and redevelopment, does that change that? Does that give us the opportunity to sort of reevaluate those whole aspects? Because you're or does that not change any of that? And I'm only asking that for clarity, because I know it was talked about in the past about, how could we get to either 1 union instead of having 2 unions and 3 contracts? And I'm only throwing that out there just to throw it out there to have that conversation. And does that change anything when you're building 2 new buildings and you start from scratch, because you're going to go and hire, you're going to do all that
Right.
stuff. And obviously the province is going to have a whole new list of conditions and stuff like that too. And I'm just asking it for information.
Okay, on the surface, I would say the builds, as just those by themselves don't have an impact, because we assume that the staff that we have are moving with us into the new buildings. They better, we need them. And so that wouldn't, I think where we might have some more discussion and need some external advice likely is at the time that we're making decisions about what these additional uses might look like, depending on the model for the additional housing at Durham, or what the reuse of the existing Grey Gables facility is. If there was a staffing component to that, I think that would maybe be something that we would want to look at. And certainly when we get into our consultants' work, they are offering us some advice and guidance around operating models and governance models and that sort of thing. So we might touch on that in the future, but just like for like right now is what I would say about our 2 existing facilities and staff complements.
Thanks,
Okay,
Kim. Go ahead.
Just to follow up. So the only reason I asked that question, because it's been kicked around at different times, and how do we get to that new place if we ever want to get to that new place? And I know with COVID now, there's going to be a whole lot of changes also with a lot of that kind of stuff. So anyway, I just wanted to throw it out there and right at the beginning have that conversation, and thank you for that.
You're welcome.
you, Paul.
Something like that would likely come to the committee of management table. Yeah.
The only reason I brought it, I just remembered something in the background that said,
Yeah.
if you had a start or a restart, would give that opportunity to sort of open up that discussion. That's the only reason I brought it up.
Thank you. Go ahead, Scott.
But as far,
thank you, Mr. Chair, and certainly congratulations to you. Full confidence. Just back to Kim's question about the off-ramp and the construction phase. I don't believe we'll be at that point during this term of council, and I think that natural off-ramp may be the next municipal election. So certainly a new council will want to probably look at the committee members. When I put my name forward, I certainly have a full commitment to actively work with all members of the committee, and I know that the other members feel exactly the same way, and I look forward to the next 2 years work with all of you. Thanks.
Thanks, Scott. Good comments from everybody. I would like to make a couple comments. It has to do with the terms of reference, and it has to do with our agenda as we go forward. So I know the committee's only been formed for about 30 minutes, but I want to make the comments anyway. Part of our mandate is a planning stage of both projects, and we're dealing with 2 projects. One, I believe, Rockwood has a time frame on it, whereas the Grey Gables project does not. Am I correct in saying that, Kim?
Not entirely, and that'll be part of what we discuss later on.
Okay.
Because of the funding approvals, the province does have some say in timelines.
Okay. And the other thing, as the project goes on in the planning stages, are we going to be held up or under complete control of the province of what they mandate, how new long-term care homes would look like. For instance, your article you sent out at the Toronto Star to everybody, I can see that happening. And are we going to be held up waiting for the province to give us guidelines in our planning system?
I don't have an answer for that. At this time, they have not indicated to us in any form their intent to make substantive changes to the design guidelines.
Okay. My last comment, I'm going to say through experience and through going through the county build, one thing that we, our consultant at the time did indicate to us that the sooner you bring an architect on board, the better it is, even at the planning stages, to get that professional there to be able to give the guideline of how it would look. It would put a lot of illness on this person too, this architect firm, to make sure they're up to all this, the new standards that are coming down long-term care. It's just something we need to think about as we're going through this process. I understand that as our agenda goes through, we have certain things that we have to do with Grey Gables and so on, which I agree 100%, but we need to keep in the back of our mind, there's a process we need to follow and put in place to make this go very efficient. That's just a comment for me.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor McQueen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good comments. Certainly, they have the commission in place that's supposed to bring recommendations back. I would say, I know there has been some discussion at the AMO board. I have an executive meeting next week. And then we also have an AMO board, Christine and I as well. So we might start to see stuff. I won't be able to report on it at the MOU table or at the executive table, but maybe at the board table, we may start to see something that coming back from that committee. So certainly when I can share that, or Christine can share that, we'll certainly bring you up to, because I know that they are somewhat plugged into that commission somewhat. That's all I can say right now, but certainly from the interest of the municipalities on that sense. So.
Okay. Councillor Mellon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just in regards to the province mandating certain requirements in long-term care, I guess I would have to say that I'd be absolutely shocked, given the political sensitivity to long-term care and all that has transpired in the last number of months. I would be shocked if they didn't stick their nose in and say, you shall do A, B, C, D if you're going to build a new long-term care facility. And you know, the sooner we put it in front of the province and say, what do you want from us, the better. Because if we do a pile of work and then the province says, nope, that ain't happening, this is what you're doing, it's all for naught. So I'd be all for getting it right in front of the minister straight off, right off the hop, and say, what do you want from us? And then we can go from there.
And I agree, good comments. And that's
Yeah.
what, that was my concern. And the pandemic has changed long-term care as the way we used to know it. It's never going to be the same. Councillor O'Leary. Oh, sorry, Christine.
Did you want to go ahead? You go ahead, Christine.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Brian. So really good discussion. The 2 points that I wanted to make is that if there is information that can be shared through AMO, certainly we'll pass it on to Heather and Kim for any agenda that would be appropriate, obviously including this one. And I really like the idea of connecting with the ministry head on, like right away. So if there is an opportunity that this task force could be before the Minister of Long-Term Care, as a delegation, not through Roma or AMO, but actually having a meeting, wondering if that would be of interest to this task force to have that set up within a specific parameter of time, and have that dialogue with the minister right away. Let them know that we are in the planning phases, and what are those guidelines or those actual prescribed legislative requirements. Thank you.
Thank you. Kim, any comment on that?
I will be meeting with our project manager from the Ministry of Long-Term Care the first week of February. I think after we have that discussion, we'll be in a better place to know exactly where things are at with them, and if there's potential for a meeting of, whether it's with the minister or with the parliamentary assistant or something like that. I'll certainly bring that idea forward.
Thanks, Kim. Councillor Leary, you have the
Thank
floor.
you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to comment, the article that Kim sent us the other day was really good, but I just want to caution everyone that that was a designer talking. And when designers talk, I mean, they'll give you everything. One of the examples was, I think all the residents use one bathtub, so they bring or at least in each wing, and kind of throws out the idea that they all should have a bathtub and that sort of thing, which more than likely won't happen because you can disinfect. But I just want to make sure that we look to someone like Jennifer and her staff to put in their list of necessities, because they're the ones that are there working every day, and they'll certainly have some good ideas too. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Leary. Go ahead, Councillor Mackey.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time, but we seem to have be having some generalized discussion. I did have a family physician, sorry, not a family physician, a doctor that's been in charge of geriatric care at the hospital, reached out to me wanting to know who to contact. He has an interest in helping this committee. So I forwarded Jennifer and Kim's email addresses, but I was just wondering if there's any process for this committee to have some external advice from someone that has that background. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. And yes, we did receive an email and expressing interest from that doctor. I think that certainly, whether it's he or others in the community, might want to provide input into this, or certainly the communications plan around these projects. We need to talk about that at some stage here. When is it appropriate to talk to the public about what's being planned for, what's being intended, to whether that's to either get people's input or to just generate interest and enthusiasm for a really significant investment that this council is going to undertake. So I don't have a precise answer for you right now, Councillor Mackey, but I've certainly, people with that kind of expertise, and inviting them to the table or inviting them to take a look at preliminary designs once they've been created, and getting their feedback is something that we could certainly consider.
Thanks, Kim. Before I go to Paul, I got to apologize for getting us off the real topic that we were supposed to be talking about, the terms of reference. And I'm wondering if we should maybe finish that terms of reference up first, and then come off our agenda, and we'll have ample opportunity to have further discussion down further on their agenda. So Kim, to answer your question, you were just putting out suggestions of how this committee reference might be changed, terms of reference?
I just wanted to ask the question, but if I'm hearing that people are okay with it as it is, I'm okay with it too.
So I guess, what is the committee's wish at this time? Do you want to just carry on with the committee structure as is and carry right through past planning, or even at that time, we can take a pause and revisit it if we had to?
Do you want a motion to that effect, Mr. Chair?
I'm going to turn to the Madam Clerk. Do we need a motion?
No, the terms of reference were brought forward at the Committee of the Whole last week. So they're here for your information and discussion purposes, but they have been adopted by Committee of the Whole, and they'll be up on the council agenda for endorsement next week.
Okay. So I guess the minutes will just reflect what Kim was bringing forward, and we can go from there. Okay. So if there's no other discussion on our terms of reference, let's move on with our agenda. Our next item is update on Rockwood Terrace project. Does that sort of be carried on with item 6, Kim?
We can certainly do that. I wonder if maybe if I flip those two right now, and we could just talk about the consultant's proposal for Grey Gables, and then I'll take you through a slide deck that
So
just a very short one.
Kim, you want me to put this on the floor first, and then we'll just carry on from there?
Would you please? That would be great, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
We have a motion here that says the report CAOR RP 0421 containing a summary of the results of the RFP CAO 0121 be received, and that SHS Consulting be retained to provide options for repositioning Grey Gables at a cost of $54,000 excluding taxes, and that the cost be funded from the long-term care redevelopment reserve. Someone to move, put it on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Mackey, second by Councillor Robinson. It's now on the floor, Kim, so I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks so much. So the county issued this RFP to seek proposals from qualified consultants to examine options for redeveloping the current Grey Gables facility. As you're all aware, the approval for the Grey Gables redevelopment came with an approval to create a campus of care. And what we need to understand is what does that look like? What's the highest and best use of the existing Grey Gables facility? And then given that, how will that connect with or benefit the new building? Because the two of them will be connected. And so that's the reason why we're proceeding with this at this time, although it might, it'll certainly be after the new building is built that we would be doing anything with the existing Grey Gables facility. But we do need to have that idea and concept in place so that when the architect is then doing their work and designing the new building, they're designing it with those future uses and hopefully complementary uses in mind. So the response that we received, we put this out to a number of folks and did connect with people to try and generate some interest around here. I think there's a lot of pretty busy consulting companies right now when you think about how many projects the province put out in the last little while. So in the end, SHL and Salter Pilon, who are the consultants that are already working on the Rockwood project, are the ones who responded to us. As I say, their response was complete and correct and showed a good grasp of what our requirements were as outlined in the RFP. The RFP notes that the successful proponent will provide recommendations to the task force on the optimal use of the existing Grey Gables facility. The analysis should include feasibility study, market demand analysis, revenue potential, operating models and costs, as well as renovation costs. And we did invite 6 companies. SHS and Salter Pilon are the company, just for reference, that worked on the Wellington Terrace, the Wellington County project most recently. They're also the ones who've done both of Simcoe County's projects. So they do have a lot of experience in this area. So for those reasons, I'm recommending that we move forward with retaining SHS and Salter Pilon as outlined in the report.
Thank you, Kim. Kim, before we started this motion, you said you had a slide deck. Is that a different area?
That's a different, yeah, that's when I talk about the status of the projects and next steps, yes.
Okay. Any questions for the committee? Councillor McQueen.
So thank you, Mr. Chair, and to the Madam CEO. Yep, that sounds good. That allows us to get going, and I think it's good to have the same company doing both projects. They probably, the buildings will look different for sure, but at least have some similarities on how we got to design them and moving forward. The other question I do have is, obviously they have to do their due diligence at getting into the buildings and looking at plans and stuff. How does that work right now with COVID? Obviously if we approve this gets to county council. They're going to, I mean, next year they can look around, but internally, I guess we'll just have to make sure we have proper protocol, I guess, if they need to get in and look at the structure or look at, I don't know. I'm just asking that question because obviously if they're going to look at design and purpose built, they're going to need to look at stuff, right? So
We do have quite a lot of information about the building, about all of our records around repairs and maintenance, the investments that have been made, what's in the building condition assessment as far as what we were forecasting to need to be doing in the future. The layout of the building, like we have the original plans and that. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to provide them most of what they need from where they are.
I can tell you one thing, Kim, one thing they will want is they'll want a complete set of drawings of the original building, which I know we do have.
Yeah.
And having that, that'll probably be the first thing they'll look at to start their way of thinking and how they put it. And I don't think they necessarily have to get right in the building at the start. If they have those set of drawings, it's a great starting place for them.
Yeah.
And tell
let's
them it
hope
has a pretty nice roof on it.
well, let's hope by the time they need to get in there, we're at a different place as well with COVID. It's hopefully that it's, down the road, but it will be something if they do need to get in, we'll just have to make sure we have the proper protocols and everything in place. So.
Thank you, Councilor McQueen. Do we have any other questions on the motion before us? Councilor Millen.
Cost of the contract is?
54,000.
Thank you.
54,000. Yeah, that was in the motion, but maybe I didn't say it plain enough. Sorry. You're muted. That's good.
I was going to ask you to repeat that motion, but I won't. So, okay. Thank you. Don't start with me.
Okay, if we're all in favor of the motion before us, all in
Just
favor?
one other thing, Mr. Chair.
Go
Just
ahead.
one other thing. Certainly, externally, our staff at Grey Highlands will be quite amenable, especially with the new build of the hospital, because underground water, sewer, piping, plumbing, all that stuff should be on your drawings, I presume, but certainly with the site plan that's approved for the new hospital, there might be had proposed some changes and stuff too. So Sean from our public utilities, I'm sure will be quite adamant or quite available to work with the new, just if you can communicate that with our CAO. So then that way, then if there's any discussion there, because I'm presuming probably Randy has, with the site plan as well. I know that was through the Grey Bruce Health Services, but I'm sure he's probably, or you probably have a copy of that, but certainly if you communicate with Karen, I'm sure quite adamantly our staff will be quite available for whatever needs to be there for sure.
Okay.
Probably needs a solution, Councilor McQueen, would be to cut those services off at the building wall and then negotiate a new lease. But, we can talk about it. Anyway, going back to our original motion, all in favor of the motion before us? Since I can see everybody, it's carried. So let's move. Kim, are you, that's all you wanted to say with that part?
Absolutely.
Okay, moving on to our agenda, our work plan development and resources. So
And I'll also include that item 5, which is an update on the Rockwood Terrace project.
okay, the floor is yours, Kim.
Thank you so much. I'm going to attempt to share my screen. Slowly. Okay, everybody see that okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Okay, so to walk you through a little bit of an update on where we are with the Rockwood Terrace project, and then we'll move forward into the Grey Gables project, and then we'll talk a little bit about the future. So with regard to the Rockwood Terrace project, it's interesting to me because it does feel as though we have been engaged in this for a very long time. The current iteration of all of this work really only dates back as far as June 2019. It was at that point that we received confirmation of the 28 additional beds based on the new application that we made earlier in 2019. So at that point, really, this project was reignited or reinitiated. We confirmed with the province our intent to proceed with the Rockwood project. We were provided with a development agreement template and a copy of the design standards a year later. And then in June, we provided to the province our bylaw with regard to land exchange in order to satisfy the requirement to show that we had acquired property. After we'd acquired the property, the province began their licensing review to confirm that there were no objections to the location or otherwise building the new home. So they did do that and they were successful with that. There were no objections that we were made aware of. It's important for the committee to be aware though that this is not licensing approval. We had then a letter from the minister in September saying you have approval to continue to proceed. This is also not licensing or funding approval. In October of 2020, we got a letter from the ADM following up to the minister's letter, letting us know that we were eligible for construction funding subsidy under the new revised funding structure and subject to executing a development agreement within 90 days. It's a little bit confusing here because 90 days would have been Christmas time. And the minister has not yet provided financing approval for this project. So we have not yet executed the agreement. Right, so that still remains outstanding. In November of 2020, SHS and Salter Peeland began their work on the feasibility study for the Campus of Care project. So if I go to the next slide, this is a little bit of an eye test, but here's the Gantt chart, the project chart for the feasibility study for the Rockwood Terrace property. They got started in November. We are just about now to see the phase 1 report from them, which will be the result of their community engagement process, the focus groups, their supply analysis, literature review, all of that modeling has gone into this phase 1, and then they'll move from there into a phase 2. So if I can go to the next slide. So the phase 1 report, when we get it, I think next week or the week after, it will summarize the information gathered over the course of phase 1, highlight key findings and conclusions, and provide recommendations on the market potential for various proposed elements of the development. So this is all related to what are the additional uses on the Rockwood Terrace property on the Durham lands, in addition to the long-term care facility. The report would also provide advice on key related areas such as, when it comes to the housing, pricing, unit size and type, tenure options, other design features, additional support or services that might be relevant and appropriate to consider having on the site, and so on. So as I say, we expect that shortly. So this committee will have an opportunity to receive that phase 1 report and to review it, to make comments, and to provide advice and guidance to our consultants. From there, we'll move on into phase 2. So based on the results of phase 1, phase 2 will allow the consultants to develop a concept plan for the housing, as well as a governance and organizational model. And this is where you get into, I think, a further explanation of some of these aspects of Campus of Care. This is also where, depending on the model chosen, they'd be speaking to the capital and operating cost requirements. What kind of investments would be required to realize the model? Where are their funding sources? CMHC, other levels of government, where could we expect to find additional resources to put towards this? Are there partnership opportunities, as well as what are the necessary planning approvals and timelines? At the end of this, we come out of it with a business plan, including implementation and estimated development schedule. And the hope is that that can all be put together by May of this year. So that's where the Rockwood Terrace piece is. I'm going to get Randy to speak to planning in a few minutes. Are there any questions about Rockwood Terrace before I move on?
Questions? And I not see everybody, so please just speak up if you have a question.
No? Okay.
And I don't
Alright.
see any, but I have a question I would like to ask you. Would you be able to send this slide deck out to all the committee members?
Absolutely. Sorry, I apologize. It's been a week. And so I do like to get this to you ahead of time. I won't do this again, but I will send it out afterwards for sure.
No problem. And the last question I got for you, this consultant, SHS, they're basically looking at the Rockwood site and they're just putting like a block where the long-term care home will go and a block for things throughout the whole project. They're not actually designing anything. They're just showing the concept of what it would look like. Is that correct?
That's right. There's a planning aspect to this too as well that that Randy will speak to a little bit more of. But like understanding on that 32-acre parcel, we basically know where it makes sense to pull streets through. Where does servicing come in? Where's stormwater? Where are the best places for the stormwater management to be on the site? And then where does the housing fit? What kind of footprint should we allocate to that? And then where are other amenities that we might consider either now or in the future? Where might they best be located?
Thank you.
Okay. So
Go ahead,
moving on.
Ken.
Okay, moving on from there, then Gray Gables. So as you know, most recently on November the 20th, we received the minister's letter approving Gray Gables 62 additional long-term care beds. We got the minister's letter, then you got an ADM's letter. The ADM's letter notes the eligibility for construction subsidies subject to executing a development agreement, just like Rockwood Terrace. And again, with that 90-day time limit on it. And again, we have not signed anything back. We haven't executed a development agreement. We did confirm our willingness to proceed with this though back in December. So with your approval today, we'll move forward with commencing with the feasibility study for the campus of care and reuse of the existing Gray Gables. And again, the consultants are looking to have that completed by May of 2021. And this was included, this is their project plan included in their response to the RFP. I did want to show you one thing. Earlier on, when we first had the discussion back in November with our project manager at the province, I asked a couple of questions of her, and I wanted this committee to be aware of the responses that I got. The people who are sitting on the committee of management are aware that we've been in discussions with the province with regard to a behavioral support transition unit in the existing Gray Gables. When I asked the redevelopment folks at the province about the BSTU, the response I got was that we didn't apply in our application for the new beds. We didn't indicate that we wanted to provide a specialized unit. And so from the province's redevelopment perspective, they weren't anticipating that a BSTU would be part of the new project. So we continue to discuss with the province around the BSTU, but this is certainly something that at the end of the day, there need to be some alignment and agreement about the future of that BSTU and was it in or was it out? And I put that back to the province and the Southwest LHIN. There would need to be some discussion there.
So, Mr. Chair, can I just add a comment there, Mr. Chair, through you?
Go ahead.
So, Kim, I raised that point to Mr. Murdoch, or not Mr. Murdoch, Mr. Walker. Wrong thinking. Mr. Walker last fall, and he wasn't aware that we even applied for that for some reason. And
no,
so
we did not. The Gray County did not apply for a BSTU. We were approached to work with them to develop a concept, and that's how there's never been a quote call for applications, if you will, around BSTU.
okay, maybe I was confused. I thought we passed a motion last year because originally it was for Lee Manor, and then it came back, and then I thought we put a motion for it that we would apply for Grey Gables.
For Grey Gables, yes, we modified the application and the proposal. Yes.
Grey Gables, not Rockwood. Yes, Grey Gables.
Yes.
Okay, I'll come back to that part later on. Sorry, I was thinking of Grey Gables on that one, but I'll come back to that later on today.
Okay.
Well,
Okay. So
yeah.
yeah, so there are still a number of open questions with regard to the BSTU. The second question I asked, did this project have the same 2025 completion date as Rockwood Terrace? And what I was told there, the application indicates that the completion date is December 2025. However, that seems long if construction is to start in April of 2022. We typically see an 18 to 24 month duration for projects of this size. So
I guess these people are not aware of 2021 construction starts.
yeah, that's right. So we, again, something to be considered. Certainly when we get to executing that development agreement, and we will go through that in some detail at a future meeting, they are asking us to commit to quite a detailed timeline for when we were going to get things done. So certainly we want to have this well thought through before we get to that point, so that we're not, leaving ourselves short in any way. I think I brought this to your attention earlier, but does the province have a working definition for campus of care? And it's quite broad. A campus of care is a model that envisions a single location with a range of housing. Should we assume that I had to ask this last one, should we assume that only the 62 beds at Grey Gables will receive construction funding? And of course, the answer was yes, you can assume that. They're not going to fund any of the beds that are already Class A.
Welcome, Mr. Warden.
So that's where we are with the two projects. And I'm going to let Randy make some comments now specific to planning considerations. So
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Scott.
Kim, can you go back to the behavioral support unit decisions that will involve some redesigning of the current Rockwood? Should we be even moving ahead until the ministry and the LIN kind of get aligned on what the long-term ask is going to be from Grey County? I mean, the BSU is going to be a regional support, and I thought the province would be on line with that or in line with that. So I'm just a little concerned, when one side doesn't know what the other side is doing.
I will say, and certainly this is something that comes out of the other committee, out of the Committee of Management. We have been in follow-up to the direction that was provided at the last meeting. We have been in negotiations with the province regards to the BSTU. I will be honest with you that those negotiations have not reached the point where we are in a position to move forward yet. So we'll keep talking.
No, thanks, Kevin. I mean, I'm glad to hear that because, I think if, in my opinion, if we're moving ahead with this, then that needs to be part of the new build design because, it requires more square footage and, the specialized units. So there, certainly would be costs in the new build for that. Mm-hmm. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we're going to let Randy go ahead.
Yes, please.
Great. And good afternoon, everyone. And thanks, Kim and Chair Burley. So with respect to the Rockwood lands, just to give you an overview from a planning perspective, so the majority of the lands are designated as primary settlement area in the county official plan and are designated as residential in the West Grey official plan. The lands are also zoned as residential with a holding zone, and that holding zone requires concept plans and supporting studies to be completed to the satisfaction of West Grey. And so the work currently being done by some of the consultants, which I'll highlight in a little bit, will address some of the requirements related to the current zoning. West Grey is currently in the process of updating their official plan and zoning bylaw. And as part of the discussions with West Grey staff, it was recommended that the lands acquired by the county be designated with what we're calling that South Street East Extension lands as residential. Those were not originally included in the official plan amendment that was done by the previous owner a few years ago. So we're recommending that those be included now that those lands have been acquired as part of the county's acquisition. There's also a small portion right at the end of Rock Street that is currently owned by West Grey. We also recommended that that piece also be included or identified as a residential designation because we think those lands could be part of an overall development concept going forward. As for the zoning that is being proposed by West Grey as part of their updates, the ideal zone would be what's called the mixed use zone or the MU1 zone, as the permitted uses provide more flexibility for the remaining portions of the lands and will likely better align with the potential outcomes of the feasibility study. And once that feasibility study is completed, as Kim has outlined, we will have a better understanding of whether or not that zone will fit the best. But all signs seem to be pointing to that's going to probably provide us with the most flexibility for developing the remainder of the site. As for the new Rockwood Terrace itself, West Grey staff have confirmed that we are good from an official plan perspective. We're good from a zoning perspective. So all that will be required for the new Rockwood Terrace is that lifting of that holding zone, as I mentioned, which requires that concept plan and supporting studies. Those should be completed this spring. We would then need to engage, of course, an architect to finalize the designs and plans for the new Rockwood Terrace and be part of the overall site plan application that would go forward to West Grey. And also, of course, support the future building permits required for the new Rockwood Terrace. So that would occur following the feasibility study being completed by SHS, as well as following some work that's also being subcontracted through SHS to GM Blue Plan. And they're doing some work to conduct a preliminary servicing plan, preliminary stormwater management, and traffic analysis. And all that work is being used to come up with the overall concept plans. And like I said, will also be utilized to provide that background documentation for the site plan application for the new Rockwood Terrace. SHS will also be doing what's called the D6 study analysis. So that's that land use compatibility study and looking at any mitigation measures required to mitigate against any potential impacts from the low volume aggregate operations south of the subject lands. So that's a bit of an overview on the planning considerations for Rockwood Terrace. And then just from a Grey Gables perspective, the lands are designated as primary settlement area in the county official plan as well. Most of the lands retained by the county are designated as neighborhood area in the Grey Hines official plan. And there's a small strip of lands along the front of the property that's designated as employment area. All the lands retained by the county are zoned as institutional. And the task force members may recall that as part of the transfer of lands to Grey Bruce Health Services for the new Markdale Hospital, the county did keep an option of acquiring some lands back from Grey Bruce Health Services to support the potential redevelopment of Grey Gables. And these lands are located southeast of the lands retained by the county, and the majority of those lands are also zoned as institutional. So with that, we will need to, as part of next steps, meet with Grey Bruce Health Services to explore this in further detail, as well as to coordinate construction traffic between the hospital and long-term care build, as it's possible that the two construction projects could overlap, and we need to ensure safe and adequate access for the existing Grey Gables building and tenants during that construction period. County staff have had some initial discussions with Grey Hines planning staff to talk about what the planning application requirements will be. And Grey Hines staff have indicated that the only planning application required would be the site plan application with supporting studies, and then of course building permit. In terms of supporting studies, fairly straightforward stuff. Planning justification report. This can be done internally by county staff. They'll also require a functional servicing report and stormwater management. And as Councillor McQueen noted, or Deputy Mayor McQueen noted, those will have to be worked on as well in conjunction with Grey Highlands staff in terms of making sure that they align with the improvements that are being done as part of the Markdale Hospital, as well as looking at what the long-term plans are from a servicing perspective that Grey Highlands is planning. And then, of course, getting into things like parking requirements and fees and securities, etc. So fairly straightforward in terms of site plan application requirements. We will need to hire a consultant for the functional servicing and stormwater management report. And we see that following the initial SHS study that will be looking at the options with respect to the existing Grey Gables facility and how the new long-term care will integrate with that facility. So that's just an overview of the planning considerations at this stage that we are aware of them.
Thank you, Randy. Does the committee have any questions?
Yes,
Mr.
Mr. Chair.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Christine.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a general question, if I might. Will SHS Consulting be bringing the report or the request regarding the lifting of the holding symbol or the lifting of the holding zone, as well as the site plan to West Grey Council? Or will this be a Grey County planning report that will be brought forward? Thank you.
Randy?
Through you, Chair Burley, it would likely be county planning staff. We haven't fully discussed this as staff, but it would likely be county planning staff bringing forward some of the results and recommendations from that. We would present that to West Grey Council and obviously have discussion with West Grey Council, making sure that it aligns with the vision that West Grey has as well with the overall community and how they see Durham growing and developing.
And Mr. Chair, that through you, that would be, I'm just looking at timelines for our overall work plan for both long-term cares, but would this report be presented perhaps in the spring? Was that what I heard earlier?
Yeah, that's our, based on where we're at, timelines with SHS and Salter Pilon doing some of the concept plan work after that first phase, as Kim highlighted. We'll have some concept plans in the springtime. That's when we think that engagement with West Grey Council would likely make most sense. We'd have some at least draft concept plans and get some further feedback and input from West Grey Council.
And that's first coming to this task force and then ultimately to Grey County Council.
Correct.
Good. Thank you for timelines.
Yeah.
If I
Councilman
may,
Okay.
can I just add that this will be a very iterative process. Like there'll be initial concepts, are we good? Have we missed anything? And then come back and then because of course the site plan part of things would be much later in the process. So, okay, thanks.
Thanks, Kim. Councillor McQueen, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know, Kim, you did a bit of a conceptual drawing there a year and a half ago whenever we made the application, but through you, Mr. Chair, to Randy, if that was possibility of the same idea or connecting it to the current Grey Gables, there's a couple things that is the Legion has a local they've developed a yes, thank you. Yes, but it's not like your today, not your a big stonework. It's sort of more of a scale down. But I don't know what agreement was there. I was always under the understanding that was always okay until something, I don't know, and that's something maybe it'd be good to follow up on that. And the other one was, the memorial gardens. There's a number of trees in through there that are. And I think they were identified through that site plan process that you were going through at the hospital a number of years back. But those, I don't have a full history of that memorial garden, but a number of those trees have certain plaques and certain things that are planted there. And so something you want to check out on that. And I mean, all that stuff could be moved. It's just something to get ahead of that, up front. and I go back to the sewer and water. I just remember there was some main trunk line that went underneath either the cenotaph or the Memorial Gardens that were, if that had to be increased in size. I'm sort of thinking that maybe it's with the new hospital, it's been rerouted. I don't know that for sure. Again, that's more of a technical thing and stuff. But those are just a few things, speak to our staff on, or because it's Grey County property. I just wondered if there was an agreement with the Legion and that Memorial Garden, because it's sort of something that politically could get, what are you doing with our memorial, all that kind of stuff. So it'd be good to follow up with that real early and just have the answer for that and the specifics on that. I'm sure it would have been a motion way back when, or however it was developed, maybe back in 99, or maybe even Brian has some history on it. I don't know, but it's a bit before my time on that part. I know that the movement of the Legion cenotaph was done. It happened around between 2010 and 2014 when Mayor Fitzgerald was there, and there was discussions that he had with the local Legion, and I think the county as well. So that may be a little bit more fresh in the mind, but it's just, those are just a few things that you want to sort of try to address, because there are issues that maybe need to be followed up on sooner than later. So.
Thank you, Councilor McQueen. Randy's got all that information. I'm quite sure he'll follow up. Does the committee, any other committee member have anything? Go ahead, Councilor Millen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It just occurred to me when Randy was talking about going to West Grey Council and so on, and a question inevitably will rise. What are you going to do with the old one? Is that part of our mandate here as well? The old Rockwood, I mean, the current Rockwood.
I think it very well could be. I think that what we were trying to do right now was to assess how best to use those 32 acres.
Right.
But the investigations that the consultants are doing around the need for housing and the price point for housing and all of that, I think then, informs our thinking about what the potential of the current building might be. The challenge is it's so far in the future, right? If you're still talking a number of years in the future, then it's difficult to know exactly what financial assistance might be available or other changes to the way that affordable housing is being supported. Those things aren't known to us, but again, to have an assessment done of that building again, a little closer to the time, is definitely something that we've all talked about. So I think that's a great point, and we just need to make sure we don't lose track of it.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Does anyone else have any questions on Kim's deck? Go ahead, Councilor O'Leary.
Kim, just to your point there, is there an opportunity or a chance that it might be the opposite? Like you talk about years down the road. I mean, if funding becomes available, it could almost go the other way too. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there in case, we might want to be ready for it in case that something like that happened.
Oh, I was just thinking that the folks that are in there now would have to have moved out before that. And then as soon as that happens, or as soon as we have a firm date of that happening, then I think we can start to plan in a real way for what to do next.
Thank you.
Yeah, that could be real awkward if you did it beforehand.
Thanks, Kim. Go ahead, Councilor Mackey.
Thanks, and through you to Kim. Realistically, Kim, when do you see a move out date from Rockwood?
3 weeks from Thursday.
I can't tell you that. I really can't. Not at this stage.
Are you thinking a 5-year project, or like realistically, what are we looking at here?
Well, can I show my next slide? Can we do that? Okay. All right. Oops. I need to go back to sharing my screen again there, Rob. Okay. So a little bit about the immediate next steps. And this is in no way a complete list, but just to give you a sense of where we're at. My thought was that when we set up a next meeting, that you folks would all want to hear from the consultants. We want to hear from SHS and Salter Pilon about what they've learned and what they intend to do next. I can provide you with whatever update I can get out of the province around of funding approvals and timeline expectations about the development agreement and project completions. So to your point, Councillor Mackey, we need to, you know, get some real information from them to some of the things that we've talked about today. Is there any knowledge that they're going to adjust the development requirements and, you know, might we have to wait for those to be finalized before we engaged an architect or and then somebody started doing design for us? And then the other piece we haven't really talked about at this table yet, the province takes a very hands-on approach with these projects. There will come a time where we will have done a chunk of our own work. And I'm thinking of, you know, you get to construction drawings, that all goes back to the province, who will go through it with a fine-tooth comb, and they will suggest whatever suggestions that they have, make whatever adjustments that they feel they must make, because they are the approval authority for all of this. And that phase of things takes a number of months. And I'm concerned, this will be like environmental assessments. It's just my opinion. But when you let a whole bunch of projects at the same time as they have done, I'm concerned that there'll be a lag of them approving all of those things, just from a personnel resource standpoint. Again, and then there's the competition for consultants and architects and all that sort of thing. So there are a number of, you know, kind of risks, if I could call it that, to our ability to just get this done one step after another without any breaks in the process. And then,
Thanks,
yeah.
Kim. I was just asking for my friends, you know, to let them know when they need to start booking rooms.
Okay, that's good.
Again for that.
Beyond that, go back one more time here. So the other thing that had been mentioned earlier was that this committee, some of you haven't had an opportunity to review the work that was done by Simcoe in Wellington County with their campuses of care and the models that they've used. Is there a chance for or interest at this table to review that work and get a sense of what others have done and what it costs and the decision making and governance models, et cetera, that have been done? So that was something for a relatively quick upcoming meeting. We could pull together that. Certainly by the April and May timeline, where we want to be looking at the feasibility study results and then starting based on that information to talk about phasing and siting and what those blocks look like, all the things that Randy just mentioned from a planning perspective about coordination at the Markdale site. There's a need for a real solid financial analysis, and Kevin has committed to do that for me. Well, he can. And so we want to talk about what this new construction financing model looks like, and talk about how that impacts the county's cash flow. Again, just to remind everyone, these builds, whatever we think it's going to be, 70 million or more, we front end that money, all of it, and they pay us back a little bit every year for the 25 years. So that will have an impact on the county's finances. And then we need to plan the next steps for the design of the new facilities. So once we get to that stage, it was my thought that between May and December, that's where we want to be. We would have wanted to have start to retain the architect and start to really undertake the design work for the long-term care facility. Somewhere in this May to December timeline, I'm thinking it's appropriate to retain a project manager, somebody that will lead this work on behalf of the county and be that day-to-day interface with the architect and whatever other folks that are involved, just to try and keep things coordinated and moving forward. I think all of us, certainly Jen and myself and Randy and everybody, are, really committed and, really want to keep this moving forward. But I think we've reached the 24 hours in a day kind of threshold, and it will be important to have another set of hands in here just so nothing gets missed.
Thank you, Kim.
That's what I have.
Kim, one important thing I think we as a committee have to do with your guidance, we're dealing with two major projects in my mind. We have to make sure we keep both projects separate from each other this time as we go through the planning and so on, because they're two completely different projects. I think it's extremely important that we keep them separated this time. It's where down the road, 2 or 3 years from now, they may amalgamate could be same marketing, I don't know. Right, since we're dealing with projects, two different ideas, two different ways of doing it. I think it's extremely important we keep them separated. You agree with that or not?
Well, this is where I would like to hear what the consultants have to say and what's been their experience about this. I honestly, I am not qualified to really make a solid recommendation to all of you. I just don't feel like I've got enough information. I would be more inclined to defer to you, Mr. Chair, who knows what it's like to run multiple large projects on different sites in different places. So much depends on the model that we decide to move forward with. How do we want to let these projects? Are they two completely separate things, or are we attaching ourselves to one firm and having them run both projects for us? I just have a lot of questions about what will be optimal. And I think it's, the best thing that we can do right now is think about all the risks and all the questions that we can come up with, so that when we get some people around the table that know what they're doing better than me, we can really get after them with all of those great questions about, tell me again how this would work. And then we can think about what that means.
No, I agree 100% with what you're saying. That's why we depend on these consultants to get the guideline ready for us to follow.
Yeah.
Councilor McQueen, you got your hand up?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chair. So a couple things. So part of our mandate is to take this to construction drawings. And once you get to construction drawings, then you go to tender, right? So is it, I guess going to that further that question, if we have, obviously the two projects are going to look different because with Rockwood, we have a lot more land to be able to be worked with, where Grey Gables it's constricted, right? So there's probably going to be two different. I mean, why would you make a constricted building at Rockwood if you have the space just to spread it out, right? So saying that, are we going to be able to have both construction drawings ready close to the same time? And if that's the case, would we go out to tender, and would the tender say you can bid on one or you can bid on both? Or how would you go out with, I guess that's part of your consultant would sort of roll that out, but I don't know. And maybe through you, Mr. Chair, maybe from your experience, if a company has the ability to bid on both, maybe they're two different types of buildings, but you still use the same kind of material, construction, footings, concrete, all that kind of trades. Would it not be more efficient for us as a bottom line to have, a company tender on having two projects doing at the same time, which is about 20 minutes apart, versus two separate companies coming in, and I guess it's availability of having somebody to be able to do that. And I just throw that out as sort of a high level thought, but I just thought that.
Councilor McQueen, at this time, I think that it's almost impossible to answer that question without having a lot more information. All I was trying to refer to, and I said to keep the two projects apart at this time, is that we're dealing with like a dog and a cat. They're two completely different projects.
I understand.
That's all I was trying to say, is that don't get them confused right now, because it'll slow the process up. We need to, yes, keep both projects going, but we need a lot of information from our consultants, and we sort of need to climb that ladder one step at a time. And we're not quite there yet. And I have different ideas and so on, but as a construction person, but I need a lot more information before I would take that first step. And we don't have that yet. We've started the
Okay.
process and look forward to it.
All right, well, I'll keep that back in my mind as we move along this process, and thank you.
Councillor Mackey, I think I seen your hand up.
Thanks, Chair Burley. In Kim's presentation, she asked whether or not this committee would like to have any more information from Simcoe County, and certainly, participating, through the other long-term care committee of management, we had that presentation, but not all members here have had that option made available to them. There's certainly more questions, that we have that I would certainly like to see, from the financial piece of what Simcoe's doing, because one thing that we've heard is that what they're doing in their campus of care, they've found an ability to really reduce the levy impact. So what I'd like to know, what portions of their campus of care pay the best, and as this committee has to make decisions, we may not have the space to be able to do everything, but there may be certain pieces that economically help subsidize our long-term care. So I'd really like to hear more of the financial pieces from Simcoe County. Just my thoughts.
Good comments, Councillor Mackey. Again, really looking forward to those SHS reports coming back. That's going to answer a lot of our questions and put us in a better direction in which way we should go. So I know we're all excited, but we got a long road for us before we actually get to where we want to be. So we just need to stop, take a deep breath and have a coffee. And it's great that we've got so much ambition, want to get going. Let's do it. Councillor Mackey?
Well, Mr. Chair, I was just, responding to Kim's question. She asked the question in her presentation of the committee's wish for more information from Simcoe County. So I was merely expressing my thoughts on it.
Thanks, Councillor Mackey, and I agree with your comments. Kim, just sort of sum things up here. First of all, the slide presentation you gave us, you must have spent a lot of time on it, and thanks very much for doing that. Look forward to getting a copy of it. Have a
Okay.
chance to look at it again, but you can see you're not sitting around with your feet up. Is there anything you need from us right now? I'm just wondering about our steps. You gave us a great slide presentation, outlined what we're waiting for and so on. We're basically at a standstill waiting for our SHS
Yes.
to get back with a report.
Yes.
Is that where we're at now?
Yes. Yes.
So-
So I think if we are thinking about timelines, I would say looking at something mid-February. So, 3 or 4 weeks out, we would be in a good place to get together again. And I would have more information, the consultants would have more information, and that might give us time to be able to pull in representatives from Simcoe and or Wellington to talk with us as well, if we can get someone from there.
And you would have an opportunity to talk to the province too.
That's right, because that meeting's the first week of February.
Okay. Councillor Robson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was wondering two things. Is it possible for this committee to see the Simcoe Manor video again, which really, I think, articulated campus of care? If there is a willingness and an interest from this committee or task force to see it. And secondly, would there be an interest to have our task force meetings on a Friday? Anyway, food for thought.
Thank you, Councillor Robson. Seems to me all days seem to be the same now. Again, that's entirely up to committee. Sort of comical. We have a council meeting the other night, and I finished the meeting and walked from my art room wing of the house to the other part of my house and met my wife, and I said it was a long drive home. So, it's just a new world we're in. It's just amazing. I guess I'm sort of lost where we are at now, Kim. We've had a great meeting here so far.
Yeah.
do we have any other business we would like to talk about? Constructively?
I see Mr. Wepler has turned his camera on, and I'm sure it's so we can all say hello, but did he have something pertinent to add there, or?
Gonna talk about money now, it'll ruin everything.
Well, money bags, yeah, for sure.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Just my thought on Councillor Mackey's question about the financials of Simcoe and Wellington. I think you still need to see what the consultant thinks of what these geographical areas can support first, because I think they're definitely different and different from what, you know, something close to Barrie is versus what something is in Markdale. So I think the consultant will help us with that and give us some direction what maybe is attainable and what is the best use, and then and could give us the best bang for our dollar, so to say. So I'm interested to see, especially when this consultant has worked with those counties too, that they'd be well aware of what they've done there. So I would hope that would come out in that and give us some direction and stuff to help support what we can think best uses and what we should be building on those sites.
Thank you, Kevin. Mr. Wharton, I'm going to put you on the spot. You've been running around to other meetings and so on, and you never had an opportunity to speak. So I'm giving you an opportunity to speak.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You can hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. I would just say, you know, at the beginning of this process, what I'm observing is that there's a lot of excitement, but also a lot of frustration because there's so many questions that we don't have answers to yet. So it's going to be quite a process. And I would just say that if the rooms look anything like the room behind Kim right now, we'll be doing very, very well.
Okay.
That's it.
That's a wonderful thing about videos, eh? Don't have one in your washroom. Is there, do we have any other business here today? And Kim, we'll leave it at to call the chair when we'll have our next meeting,
Thank you.
when you get the information on.
Yes.
So if we've no other business here today, I would ask for a motion for adjournment. Moved by Councilor Millen, second by Councilor McQueen. All in favor?
Have a good weekend, all.
Now adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Great meeting.
Thanks.
Have a good weekend.
Okay, everyone.
Good
See you
weekend.
next week.
Go
Bye-bye.
Leafs, go.
Go jump on that snowmobile there, right?